Hello everyone! I'm Lost, and welcome to the second part of the Future of Elden Ring's DLC and multiplayer. This part is going to focus on gameplay balance. We have a group of PvP enthusiasts that have come together with a lot of different balance changes. They're going to suggest that to FromSoft. In fact, I have seen the documents. They are all written in Japanese. I don't understand anything. But they are taking this very seriously, which is something that I really appreciate. Now, these people are coming from a very competitive point of view, which is interesting because I come from the very opposite point of view. I very much look at Elden Ring the same way I look at Smash Brothers. Now, Smash Brothers was never a game that was meant to be played competitively. The developers just decided, hey, we have a bunch of cool characters, let's have them fight, and so they made the characters and based their movesets on their personality. And because of that, some of these characters simply sucked, and some of them were really good, and some of these characters could work really well on some stages, and some of these characters would just be flat out impossible on others. And that's kind of how I view Elden Ring as well. You have all of these different weapons. Some weapons are quote-unquote counters, while some weapons are garbage, and some weapons work really well in certain scenarios. And because you play invasions mostly, and when I say you, I mean me, these different elements come together to create such an unpredictable experience, which is what I absolutely adore. That being said, the chase for balance is an honorable one, so we will take a look at what they have suggested and we'll react to it. So let's begin, shall we?
You know what separates Souls PvP from other games? Tarnished. It offers a unique
Yeah, I basically just said that. It's the unique blend of 3D melee, right? The interesting battle arenas, and a bunch of different and really cool weapons. And the basics, fighting system is just so damn good in my opinion. It's probably going to talk here about a lot of spacing. That's something I think really separates Elden Ring, Dark Souls from a lot of other fighting games, which is that it's spacing. I'm almost certainly going to talk about spacing.
3D melee experience not found in many other 3D fighting games, such as Tekken and Soul Calibur. Traditional 3D fighters rely on preset sidesteps, reducing the depth you would expect from 3D combat to only timing rather than true spatial awareness.
Aha! They said the word. It is spacing.
Contrast, arena fighters like For Honor, despite their 3D appearance, operate more like 1D in combat due to auto-targeting. This simplifies battles to an advanced rock-paper-scissors timing system without the depth of spacing that both 2D and 3D fighting games.
I played a bunch of For Honor, and I basically played that game as a fighting game. I loved the 1v1s. And I really appreciated that they tried to do more with 3D and spacing, but they're not wrong here. Elden Ring is just such a different experience. It really embraces that whole spacing aspect of it. And you know what? From an invader point of view, that means I can run away. Disengage and then re-engage again, which is a lovely feature.
Offer. When battling other gamers in Souls PvP, combat emphasizes spatial awareness, demanding players to consider distance and positioning in all directions, unlike traditional 2D and 3D fighters that only do it in the 2D plane. This allows spacing, but also advanced techniques like strafing, where you strategically position yourself to avoid attacks, relying on precise movement rather than preset evading animations like dodge rolls or sidesteps. This adds depth to the combat, similar to how spacing does, which is why many would consider the Souls PvP one of the only true 3D melee PvP experiences.
Yeah, can I think of a different game that has this level of focus on spacing. I can't. Maybe there are games out there that I simply can't remember, but if you can, leave them in the comments. I'm curious about this.
Combined with the amazing world and multiplayer makes it quite addictive once you get a little taste. However, for whatever reason at FromSoft...
Oh, maybe wrestling games? I haven't played a wrestling game, but you can run away from... I don't know.
The PvP aspect often receives fewer resources, neglecting critical factors like network code, balance, and depth, which hampers the full potential of what it could be.
Yeah, this is true, and this is an important point to make. Elden Ring PvP and Souls PvP has... I don't want to call it an afterthought, because I don't think that's fair to the work that has been put in. But it's never been the major focus. And because of that, we have to yell rather loud for any changes to really be implemented. That being said, we now know that FromSoft is listening. In fact, they have been listening more as of late than ever before. They have changed their systems, allowing for specific PvP balancing, and they even listened to us when we, well, I was a small part of it, but when we created a website that suggested a ton of different PvP changes. That bodes well for the future, if you ask me. And I think it's really nice that they do that. From Software has always had a problem communicating to us, at the very least the Western audience. And I really hope that this effort is taken into consideration.
Elden Ring was expected to elevate the Souls PvP by introducing verticality through jumping, but the game regrettably took steps backward, compromising the core appeal of Souls PvP's 3D melee combat. This setback has significantly impacted the game's overall balance and diminished the enjoyment that made Souls PvP so captivating.
Yeah, when the game was first released, it was a strange step back. Now they have slowly improved it, but I cannot underline enough the amount of damage that happened to the PvP community when the game was first released. It was an unbalanced mess, and while I say true balance is probably impossible, the amount of bullshit that happened during the first few months of gameplay was awful. Absolutely, and I think it put a lot of people off the PvP, which is extra strange when they had such an excellent system in Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 was maybe not perfect, but oh my god, it was great. And I was so sad when I noticed these huge differences. I still played and I still loved it because it was still one of the few games that gave me this whole experience with the invasions and the spacing and all of that. But why move backwards? One of the things that they did with patch 1.0 was they reverted back to the Dark Souls 3 system. Not completely, not in a true sense, but they took the system that they have now and they changed it in a way to emulate what we had in Dark Souls 3, which is why I think Elden Ring's combat has never been better. It still has a way to go, but it's a very good step in the right direction.
Despite From Software's efforts to balance the game, including the remarkable 1.10 patch that improved weapon viability by causing all initial hits to stagger, the game's balance remains a bit lackluster to say the least. This persistent issue is rooted in fundamental problems that have eroded what once made playing PvP a unique...
Okay, so just a quick note here. They have written all of this stuff in Japanese as well. You can clearly see that we really want to be heard here. That's just not necessarily any... I just want to emphasize that, because I want a lot of credit to go to the people who made this video.
Experience. As such, the majority of our discussion in this section of the video will be dedicated to explaining why this is the main cause of these balance problems, while also providing our solutions. We firmly believe that no amount of changes to poise and damage will balance the game unless this specific issue is addressed.
Literally.
Have you ever noticed how absolutely everyone dodge rolls after every missed attack, Tarnished? There is a reason for this, actually. One that hinders the balance of the game in many more ways than you can imagine. In older games like Dark Souls 3, the true 3D melee PvP experience that contributed to the fun and balance of PvP was achieved through the strengths and weaknesses of the 3 attack types: horizontal, vertical, and thrust. Horizontal attacks counter strafing, but lack clear drawbacks. Thrusting attacks deal more damage on counter hits, are less telegraphed due to their minimal wind-up, and boast the most concentrated hitbox frames since they initiate immediately in front of you. This makes them the most challenging to evade with dodge rolling, but easier to avoid by strafing. Vertical attacks, on the other hand, were pretty garbage. In Elden Ring, the introduction of jumping presents an opportunity to refine the balance between 3 distinct attack animations.
So I absolutely adore the addition of jump attacks. I think jump attacks was something that could have gone terribly wrong. I was super nervous about jump attacks when the game was first announced. I was afraid that we would have like dolphin jumpers jumping all the time, but they implemented it in a very nice way. I know certain people that don't like jump attacks. Chase is one of them. I adore them, and I do think though that they need a bit of balancing, and I'm sure they're going to talk about this. Another thing I really liked about the Dark Souls 3 system, and they may talk about this a little bit in the future, was the mind games that the guaranteed 2-hit attacks gave you. So my favorite weapon in Dark Souls 3 was the mace. And the reason for that is I perfected the roll catch. What I did was, since we got a guaranteed 2-hit, people expected to be hit twice, and they would roll out of harm's way after getting hit twice. What I did was I took advantage of that mindset. They are mashing, okay, I will hit them once. And since they are mashing, I can stop hitting them, move a bit forward, and instead of hitting them twice, roll catch them again. And then repeat that process. I have, on record, I have a video somewhere of me roll catching somebody 18 times. 18! Granted, my mace was broken at that point. I just wanted to see how far I could push it. Maybe he wasn't... maybe he was just bad, or maybe he was... didn't give a crap, given the fact that I didn't do all that much damage, but I did manage to roll catch the guy 18 times. So, that's something I really want to see in Elden Ring again. Maybe it's just personal, maybe I'm just being selfish here, but I would like all of the maces in Elden Ring to get the same 2-hit combo as Dark Souls 3 had, right? That would make that weapon class unique, and people would use it way more. And maybe you'd have to adjust damage to make sure that it's balanced, but I think that's definitely something that could be done.
Incorporating 3 attack types, thrust, horizontal and vertical, and 3 evasion methods, dodge roll, strafe and jump, we can establish a more nuanced combat system. Thrust attacks would excel at countering dodge rolls due to their subtle telegraphing and precise hitbox frames, making them challenging to evade. Horizontal attacks, characterized by their wide swings, would serve as a counter to strafing maneuvers, while vertical attacks would finally find their strength by countering jumping. In this framework, dodge rolls would maintain their status as the most versatile evasion method, capable of avoiding all 3 attack types. with thrust attacks posing the most significant challenge to avoid when using the dodge roll technique. Strafing would be effective against both thrust and vertical attacks, while jumping would prove effective against both thrust and horizontal strikes. This system would create a well-rounded equilibrium where each attack type effectively counters one of the dodging maneuvers and...
This is wonderfully explained, by the way. Well done, Waifu, well done, Gabri, and well done everybody else who has contributed to not only the ideas this video is trying to convey, but also the conveying itself. The way information is being delivered here is easy to understand, and if FromSoft isn't listening to this, I'm gonna be so sad.
And each dodging maneuver has two corresponding attack types to contend with. The thrusting attack would be the sole attack type that can be evaded by all three evasion methods, including dodge rolls, despite being the most difficult to avoid using a dodge roll. This effectively balances thrust attacks, especially given their numerous features, including increased damage during counter hits. Sadly, in Elden Ring, thrusting attacks, while having significant advantages and being notably challenging to evade through dodge rolling, are now impossible to strafe due to last-minute auto-targeting. Attempting to jump over them is also unreliable because of the auto-targeting, which redirects them upward at the last minute. Horizontal attacks, as expected, counter strafing, but...
Yeah, this is interesting, because I always felt, and I do this all the time, I always felt like I should be able to jump over spears and rapiers, and I think we all had the experience that somebody comes running at you with dual naginatas, and you jump, it's just such a perfect opportunity for a counter, and they hit you because it goes upwards. Sad times.
Are similarly problematic to jump over due to the last-second auto-targeting. Vertical attacks, on the other hand, properly counter-jumping but also suffer from the issue of being unstrafable due to last-second auto-targeting towards the opponent. As such, thrust attacks remain supreme as the best type of attack in the game. This is evident in the prevalence of weapons like thrusting swords, double great spears, and double spears, which are...
Yeah, there you go. Whenever they say double spears, it's dual naginatas all the way, which is rather boring. And you know what? It's so sad because a single naginata has a very cool and interesting moveset, but you never see it because of the just bonkers effectiveness of the dual naginatas.
Are at the moment the toothpicks that everyone hates.
I do hate the toothpicks. I do.
The main problem is the auto-targeting of attacks just before they hit. This happens because the window for controlling the rotation of an attack animation in Elden Ring ends right when the hitbox begins, making every attack a tracking monster, while strafing and jumping become useless. Some weapons, like the thrusting sword two-handed light attack, have the rotation control window ending inside the hitbox, which is even more problematic and highlights how broken these toothpicks are. To address these issues, the solution lies in Dark Souls 3, serving as a reference for From Software to effectively address the problems. In the mod we have created to demonstrate how to fix these issues, the tracking or rotation window of neutral-based attacks and their follow-up combos, including light attacks, offhand attacks, double weapon attacks, shield poking attacks, and crouching attacks, were all adjusted so that they conclude their tracking or rotation 3 frames before the hitbox.
This is really good, because what they are suggesting here is simply adjusting certain values. From Software doesn't need to work too hard to implement these changes, and which is why I do believe that we have a good opportunity here to get these changes through. Maybe not immediately when the DLC is released. I'm hoping that we'll get some DLC news on the Game Awards, which I believe is the 7th of December. And then, eventually, we will get a release in February. I really want the DLC to be released on the 2-year mark of the game. I mean, it's so damn close.
This change is what you see in Dark Souls 3 and has made strafing and jumping more reliable. To compensate for the reduced tracking near the hitbox, we have improved it during the startup of the animations. Specifically, we have allowed only the first neutral attacks to have the window for controlling rotation start 4 frames earlier. Do not do this to the combo, follow-up attacks, and the crouching rolling attacks. Instead, give those attacks a set turn speed of 850 degrees between the first disabled turning to the second one. This way, the
They're even showing what they're doing in the it's like a goddamn YouTube tutorial. Which I appreciate. This is the kind of this is the kind of stuff that I can't say too much about because I don't know too much about frame data and that type of thing. I'm more of a casual hardcoreist, if that even makes sense. I play this game for a living, but I'm much more a feel guy than actual numbers. I studied theater.
these attacks can still commit without rotating at the start of the animation, so that the angle checks backstabs to work properly. More importantly, to enhance control over attack animation rotation, it's very important to remove the disable directional change event from all attack animations. While positioning this event near the hitbox may make sense to prevent last-second auto-targeting, it becomes redundant due to the presence of the disabled turning event. The problem with this event is its placement in the middle of the window, where control over attack animation rotation is very important, because that is where most of the forward lung momentum happens. This positioning hinders character control of attack rotations, resulting in attacks feeling less fluid compared to older games that didn't include this event. To further empower control over attack animation rotation, we propose adopting the thrusting swords approach from Elden Ring for all running attacks, as that one works like how all running attacks work in Dark Souls.
Has any other community gone so deep into the weeds as From Software's community? I don't know. If anybody else knows of a video that talks about the game like this, let me know, because this is thorough stuff.
Souls 3, the first few frames have infinite control of rotation, which allows players to adjust their attacks accordingly when wanting to punish opponent mistakes by turning towards them and then commit more as you get closer towards the hitbox. Whereas most Elden Ring's running attacks have a limited control during those early frames, making it very stiff to turn towards and utilize the running attacks appropriately to punish opponent mistakes. So we suggest removing the first 450 set turn speed entirely, and then changing the second 450 set turn speed into 360 set turn speed. Do not touch the middle set turn speed that is usually low. To improve heavy attacks, which are slower and less versatile, we recommend removing the first disabled turning from the release animation only and not the fully charged one. Furthermore, enhancing forward lung momentum for all heavy attacks would be beneficial, similar to what was done to the great weapon classes in patch 1.09.
Yeah, for all heavy attacks should have somewhat of a forward thrust, forward momentum, so that it can catch people who are running away, rolling away, backing away, that type of stuff. That's why I love most of the special R2 weapons that have a unique attack, because it moves your character forward, which allows you to roll catch. It's a really, really cool thing. And they missed out here.
Lastly, Ashes of War and weapon skills should have their tracking and rotation enhanced. For instance, enhancing tracking in both parts of the Bloodhound finesse would make the attack more viable in combat. Overall, these changes aim to restore the strengths and weaknesses of the aforementioned attack types and significantly improve balance overall. Weapons like thrusting swords.
So I that looked really badass. I don't know if we need to enhance the tracking on the first part of the Bloodhound's Fang weapon, but the second part definitely needs some enhancement.
Swords and double spears, which previously dominated, can now be approached and countered reliably. These changes also enhance control over attack animation rotations, resulting in more responsive and fluid combat. Rolling is not only the best way to evade attacks, but it's also the fastest method to return to a neutral state.
And it's quite the meme. I've seen plenty of videos where, oh, this is what rolling is in in real life, in MMA, in, I don't remember the guy, but he does sword fighting on YouTube. There's a lot of fun stuff there.
Instead of utilizing other methods such as guarding and regular movement, this also favors faster weapons, especially, yep, you guessed it, thrusting weapons. To understand why, let's examine the methods for regaining a neutral state. Dodging.
Oh, I'm also hoping that they talk about, give us iframes on the backstep. Why not? It is kind of useless currently. So give us iframes on it. It would be a fun new thing to add to our arsenal.
Guarding. Regular movement. And in Elden Ring, a fourth option was introduced called crouching, collectively referred to as neutral cancels. The dodge roll was known for allowing players to regain a defensive neutral stance. However, it was adjusted to avoid being too fast due to the powerful effect of invincibility frames it offered. On the other hand, the other neutral cancels, like guarding and regular movement, didn't have any powerful effects like invincibility frames, but instead, they allowed players to regain neutrality both offensively and defensively. This provided the flexibility to choose their next actions after an attack, including either reaction dodging or continuing their aggression. One key aspect of the older games was the consistent speed when cancelling into guarding or regular movement. For example, the regular movement is always the slowest of all cancels to prevent input drops from accidental moving before doing other inputs. However, it was only 1 to 2 frames slower than the second slowest cancel. This smooth consistency made the movement cancel and the ability to regain both offensive and defensive neutral states much smoother for most.
This is, by the way, why I'm a Fields guy. There's a lot of numbers and stuff that is being tossed at us, and I'll be honest, I could probably understand it if I watched it a few times, but sometimes now my mind just wanders off when all of these numbers are going to are presented. Of course, these numbers are incredibly important, don't get me wrong, and it's probably the most important when we are giving all of this information to FromSoft. I am just going to be one of those that benefit from this.
Weapons. In Elden Ring, though, dodge roll is the primary method for returning to a neutral state. Currently, cancelling the recovery of most attack animations into a dodge roll is considerably faster than using any other neutral cancel. Additionally, the other neutral cancel options, such as guarding and regular movement, have become slower than ever. For instance, in contrast to older games where the difference between the second slowest cancel and the regular movement cancel consistently ranged from 1 to 2 frames,
yeah, you can see how much slower these guys are compared to each other.
Elden Ring introduces a much larger discrepancy in cancel speeds depending on the weapon speed. While faster weapons such as, once again, thrusting weapons maintain a 1 to 2 frame difference, just like the older games, but colossal weapons have an 11 frame difference between
thrusting weapons suck, man.
Regular movement. That is absolutely insane. In other words, fast cancels with invincibility frames turns every attack into a 20-year-old zoomer. They lack any sort of commitment. Players can easily avoid the consequences of their actions by simply dodging, which makes it challenging to capitalize on opponents' errors. And the latency in the PvP.
Yeah, I love fights where you can trade. That's something I love. But I think we all have experienced that situation where You go in for an attack, you swing, then they swing, they dodge away, and you miss. They hit, you miss.
PvP network code makes this issue 10 times worse. This diminishes the risk-reward aspect of combat and lowers the skill ceiling of the game. Faster weapons, and especially thrusting swords, are harder to dodge due to their speed and lack of telegraphing. Thus, a system that allows players to return to a defensive neutral stance repeatedly allows them to attempt high chance to hit attacks safely. On the other hand, slower, heavier weapons rely on hyper armor, which is the ability to withstand incoming attacks without staggering. To effectively use these slower weapons and make good use of the hyper armor, you have to play aggressively and be the one initiating attacks because your attacks are too slow to reliably hit opponents on the first try. You need to keep trying until you successfully land a hit by regaining a neutral position in an offensive stance. But in a system where the best way to return to a neutral state only allows you to return to a defensive position, as soon as you miss an attack because your opponent easily dodged it due to its slow nature, you cannot continue your aggression. This is because
the more I watch this, the more I realize I really hate thrusting swords. Maybe just remove all the rapiers altogether. That's not gonna happen, but the sentiment is there.
when the offensive neutral cancels like guarding, crouching, and regular movement are slow, it puts slower weapons at a severe disadvantage, as they can't regain an offensive neutral state fast enough to continue aggression and make good use of their hyper armor. And the cherry on top, many of the offensive options after an attack, such as using heavy attacks after a light attack, are extremely slow compared to past games where the light attack cancels and heavy attack cancels had the same speed of recovery cancel. This inconsistency in recovery cancel speed further hampers the ability to control your character offensively and makes weapons that rely on continuous aggression and mind games, like the slower weapons, even less effective. In summary, fast weapons are the favorite son of Elden Ring, while slow weapons grow resentful for being left unattended in a game where the primary recovery method does not benefit them at all, while all the other options are tremendously bad for them.
Oh, this was so bad early on in the game's life. It has become a little better, but it's still not good. I still love using greatswords though. I absolutely do. And the best greatsword probably would be the Claymore, simply because it has that beautiful stab. You know what? A little as an aside, but only the Claymore has the heavy stab. I think that either the Banished Knight's Sword or the other one, the Knight's Sword, I don't remember if that's its actual name, but the Knight's Sword, the one that has that fancy little spin animation when you attack, could have a heavy stab. That would be a nice little addition to the to weapon variety.
Once again, the answer lies in Dark Souls 3, where From Software effectively dealt with similar problems. We've implemented these changes in our mod to showcase how these improvements can be made. First, we needed to determine the appropriate cancel window or speed for dodge roll cancels and streamline it. This allows for better overall balance, taking into account factors like attack speed, range, animation type, damage type, and their variations.
It's interesting that we did take such a huge step back. So that makes me think, were we just incredibly lucky with Dark Souls 3? Because that game was very good at a lot of these things that Elden Ring suck. Did we get another lead multiplayer developer? What happened here? Why the step back? Maybe it was because they wanted a completely different system. They just wanted to try something new. They don't subscribe to the notion of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Maybe they were trying to reinvent themselves. I mean, those are honorable goals, sure, but Dark Souls 3, man.
Root cause of the balance problems lies in having two similar speed attacks with completely different neutral cancel recoveries. To address this, we analysed which dodge roll cancels were executed correctly, depending on specific animations and weapon speed classes. Excluding the dagger class, there are three types of weapon speed classes: light weapons, heavy weapons, and colossal weapons. In each weapon speed class, we fine-tune the dodge roll cancel speed in attack animations, drawing inspiration from successful mechanics in Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. For example, we adjusted the neutral light attacks of light weapons based on Elden Ring two-handed straight swords dodge roll cancel, which occurred 10 frames after the hitbox, and the thrusting weapon class in Dark Souls 3, which...
It's a lot of complicated stuff here. I gotta say though, as an aside to all of this, I'm kinda happy with myself today. I was a little afraid that I wasn't going to be able to contribute with anything of value on this reaction. The prior video, oh absolutely, had plenty of things to say. This video, I was a little afraid I would just be going, yeah. But we are basically almost halfway through the video, and I'm already been recording for half an hour, so yeah, I can be talkative.
Had a 9-frame cancel window, resulting in a balanced and satisfying feel. In contrast, Elden Ring's thrusting sword class had a 3-frame cancel window. Talking about weapon favoritism, huh? To promote more opportunities for punishing mistakes, we settled on 10 frames to ensure more commitment for all neutral attacks. We also adjusted the dodge roll cancel speed for movement-based light attacks to be 2 frames slower than the neutral light attacks, aligning them with similar attacks that worked well in both Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. The dodge roll cancel for heavy-based attacks was made 4 frames slower than the neutral light attacks while considering what worked appropriately in Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. We then ensured that each weapon speed class had a 4-frame difference in terms of their dodge roll recovery cancel speed. We also balanced other neutral cancels such as guard, crouch, and regular movement cancels in relation to the dodge roll cancel's position. We made sure that every guard and crouch cancel is 2 frames faster than the dodge roll cancel across all attack animations. Guard and crouch animations do not allow for an instant dodge roll, so using these cancels to dodge would be as slow, if not slower, than a normal dodge. This change allows players to regain control of their character in a neutral stance, enabling both offensive and defensive control. The results closely resemble the Dark Souls 3 versions, with the guard cancel, for example, being 8 frames after the hitbox for the one-handed straight sword light attack in both the mod and Dark Souls 3, as opposed to Elden Ring's 11 frames. Regular movement cancel is always 2 frames slower than the second slowest cancel for all attack animations, ensuring a fluid experience. Before implementing the regular movement cancel changes though, we suggest making sure that all the usual second slowest cancels don't limit the improvements we want to get from the regular movement cancel. The left-hand cancel, which deals with offhand attack cancellation, should remain unchanged for one-handed movesets. Altering it would create true combos between right and left-handed attacks. However, we recommend removing it for two-handed movesets, since it's pointless for them and only serves to limit the improvements that regular movement cancel can achieve if...
Yes. Also, a little bit of an aside again. I really like the only waifu hand here. Very good.
It happens to be the second slowest cancel. We also suggest standardizing the speed of the magic cancel, slow weapon skill, and slow item cancel to match the new dodge roll cancel speed across the board. This change is also aimed at not limiting the new improvements to the regular movement cancel, as these cancels tend to be the second slowest as well. To ensure backsteps are unaffected by the dodge cancel changes, we separated their cancel windows while maintaining a shared button input. We did this in the mod by making it so that a special code prevents all actions related to dodge roll cancel except for backstep in the frame it exists in. Backsteps lacking invincibility frames needed to maintain their cancel window to preserve their utility and...
Yeah, but they should still have iframes. Give them iframes. I want iframes on the backstep.
And overall fluid movement. We achieved this by making the recovery cancel into backsteps faster than dodge rolls. 6 frames for light weapons, 8 frames for heavy weapons, and 10 frames for colossal weapons. This change not only eliminates drawbacks from the dodge roll adjustments, but also enhances the backstep, providing players with more options for fluid offensive control and improving overall combat. All offensive attack cancels were improved to provide more mixing potential between attacks. A significant change was allowing the cancellation of heavy attacks as soon as you can cancel into a light attack. We achieved this by modifying the end right light kick cancel, which only applies to light attacks, to function as right hand cancel that applies to both light and heavy attacks. This enhancement greatly improves the offensive capabilities and mix-up potential of every weapon. We also improved right-hand cancel timings for movement-based light attacks across all weapon classes, setting it to 4 frames after the hitbox for light weapons and the 10 frames for heavy weapons. As for colossal weapons, which were previously unbalanced, we recommend setting their right-hand cancel across all attacks to 12 frames, as they all share the same colossal type stagger. Additionally, we suggest improving the fast weapon cancel and fast item cancel to provide more offensive control and mix-up options. For this,
I would like as much mix-up potential as we possibly can. I want more mind games to be present in Elden Ring PvP, because, well, that just makes me feel smart when I win.
Attacks with light and dagger-type staggers should have their fast weapon skill cancel and fast item cancel set to 4 frames after the hitbox. Attacks with heavy-type stagger should be set to 8 frames after the hitbox, and attacks with colossal-type stagger should be set to 12 frames after the hitbox. These numbers are also based on successful mechanics in Elden Ring and are aimed at aligning them with other changes for a more streamlined system. For example, the 12 frames for the colossal stagger were inspired by the colossal sword's crouch attack, which had a fast 12-frame weapon skill cancel. This cancel was perfectly aligned, allowing for many moves like stamp to be used after hitting someone with it, and it can catch players who panic dodge rolls. Now, all attacks of colossal swords and weapons can benefit from this, making many Ashes of War and weapon skills much more viable. We also recommend applying these improvements to weapon skills and Ashes of War, not just normal weapon attacks. For example, making stamp follow-ups adhere to the rules we've outlined for colossal-based neutral light attacks will result in better neutral and offensive cancels. The same principle can be applied to other Ashes of Wars and weapon skills. And the bane of many players' existence, the persistent input drop issue, particularly during guarding, has been present in the game since its release.
Yeah, input drops is something that, well, I complained about it a lot earlier. I've kind of stopped complaining, but I'm still experiencing it, and it's no fun when it happens.
Making characters stand there like a deer in the headlights of love and making players lose their hair out of anger. This issue is likely hard-coded and connected to sprinting. Elden Ring introduced a mechanic allowing immediate neutral attacks upon releasing the sprint button instead of running attacks, providing control over attack types. However, the guard stance during sprint continues to operate under the old system, causing conflicts and resulting in input drops, especially when a player cancels a previous attack animation with a guard cancel while holding sprint and subsequently letting go of sprint. This issue is unique to Elden Ring and needs to be dealt with for the sake.
I do have to say, though, there are certain things about, well, both Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3 combat that can be a little annoying at times. In Dark Souls 3, playing defensively was always going to be a much better strategy. And I really hope that if we do all of these things, then aggressive playstyles can find some benefit in all of that. Again, I can't tell if that's going to be the case here, just simply due to, yeah, I play by feel and not by these numbers. They don't necessarily speak to me as much as somebody else in the audience. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Of some players' mental health. In summary, these modifications will bring back one of the aspects that truly made PvP in Souls games special, which is the ability to experience a genuine 3D melee PvP encounter. The playing field will now be leveled when facing thrusting sword simps. Players can approach and counter them effectively through strafing, even when wielding slow colossal weapons, thanks to the improved neutral cancels and increased mix-up potential provided by the enhanced attack cancel. cancels. These
Yeah, that seems to be, it even says here, have a plethora of ways to go on the offensive, which is what we need.
changes effectively bridge the gap between the best and worst weapons, creating something everyone craves: variety. And last but not least, these improvements also have a positive impact on PvE gameplay, since balancing for PvP often translates to improved PvE engagement, because if you are able to hit a human with these improved attacks, you will be able to do it against a regular enemy even easier. In the end, everyone
Yeah, that's a fun element that I didn't think about, but all of these additions to the gameplay, all of these changes will be felt by the PvE community as well. Maybe, maybe they don't go in as hardcore and practice as much as I would or anybody else, which makes sense if you're just playing for the PvE's sake. But hey, an easier to control character is a benefit for PvE as well.
benefits from these changes, and regardless of how many times poise and damage are adjusted, overall, balance will remain poor if these critical issues are not addressed. Having covered the more technical aspects of Elden Ring's current little oopsies, let's move on to more general balance problems. Don't sleep on me now, little meatballs!
Poise and hyper armor. Poise and hyper armor are super important for my enjoyment here. It's super important for gameplay and balance, and it is the main reason why I felt so why PvP felt so off, in my opinion, when the game first came out. They have changed it now, of course, and we talked about that earlier. But let's see what these guys have to say.
Patch 1.10 changed to poise values, which allowed the first hit of most weapons to always stagger in one hit, was one of the best changes to ever happen in Elden Ring. This change made many weapons more viable, and in turn made PvP much more enjoyable. But this massage spot does not have a happy ending, as there still are quite a few issues regarding poise and hyper armor. So let's take a look at those, shall we? For some reason unknown to mankind, heavy weapons have significantly lower poise damage compared to the improved hyper armor values. This issue can be attributed to two factors. Firstly, heavy weapons have a lower PvP poise damage multiplier of 2, in contrast to the standard 2.7. This discrepancy has hilariously caused some light weapons to possess higher poise damage values than certain heavy weapon attacks. Secondly, follow-up combo chain attacks deal only half the poise damage of the initial attacks. When these two issues are combined, it allows two players using heavy weapons to continuously attack each other without either player getting staggered. While it's majestic to
Yeah, that's really interesting. And as we talked about earlier, in Dark Souls 3, you had a system where if you hit them once, you would get another hit in guaranteed. In Elden Ring, it's not a guarantee that, well, it's almost a guarantee that you will stun somebody when you hit them once, unless you're using a rapier and the other guys are using poise values that goes beyond 109, I believe. Now, it's not like Dark Souls 3, though. You're not guaranteed to get that second hit. But I think the thought behind it was that you can't now just spam hits with your weapons, because if you do go for the multiple hits, a guy with a heavier weapon can just now swing and get you. The better players, though, they will still just hit once and then jump away. They understand this.
To observe these apes going at it, this issue clearly affects the enjoyment of heavy weapon matches. To address these issues, first adjust the main multiplier for heavy weapons to 2.7 to align with all other weapon types. Then increase the PvP poise damage multiplier for follow-up chain combo attacks from 1 to 2.7, not only for heavy weapons, but also for colossal weapons, maintaining consistency. Do not implement this change for light weapons,
No.
as we will discuss later
Yeah.
why this is not necessary. Furthermore, enhance heavy attacks with a poise damage multiplier of 3 instead of 2.5 to ensure efficient poise breakage. Lastly, apply the same PvP poise damage multiplier from the neutral release heavy attack to all running heavy attacks for all weapons, including light weapons. This distinction will set...
You know what? I really appreciate that they leave, if we could just go back here for a moment, they leave a nice empty space behind me, so I'm not covering up too much of the information.
The increased poise damage on heavy weapons should address hyper armor issues without weakening its strength. However, some weapon skills have hyper armor frames that start too quickly, such as Storm Stomp, enabling easy reaction trading. To rectify this, adjust hyper armor frames for all attacks, excluding Endurance Stamp, to start no earlier than 10 frames into the animation. Flails and hammers possess excessive hyper armor for their speed, allowing them to withstand slower heavy weapons and attack more rapidly. Reduce the innate poise value of flail and hammer classes from 52 to 26. Then, remove hyper armor frames from the club neutral follow-up combo attacks, retaining hyper armor only on the first neutral attack, as that one is too fast to have hyper armor on its follow-up combos. Furthermore, the barbaric...
Again, I so want hammers to get a guaranteed 2-hit combo. Do whatever you need to do. Adjust the damage so that 2 hits can be the same as 1. I just want the mind games to return here for me, man. I really do. Make them feel special as well, because hammers and flails are a weapon class right now that just doesn't... It doesn't feel like they have too much of an identity at the moment. No.
Roar and Warcry, unique heavy attacks on light weapons, exhibit excessively strong hyper armor, allowing them to withstand even colossal jumping attacks. To address this imbalance, reduce the hyper armor strength of light weapons Barbaric Roar and Warcry, unique heavy attacks from 180 toughness to below 120 toughness. This adjustment ensures that these attacks are still effective against light weapons, but are not overly powerful against heavy and colossal weapons. Also, certain Ashes of War and weapon skills may require added hyper armor due to increased poise damage values, particularly slower ones like Square-Off's Heavy Follow-Up and Spinning Strike. These adjustments are needed to maintain their functionality after patch 1.10. Lastly, there are some issues with certain Ashes of War and...
Yeah. We were talking about multi-hits. My god, the absolute best Ash of War after the patch is of course Spinning Slash. And especially if you use a weapon that has bleed and then you use something like a Blood Flame on it. It is almost impossible to get out of. And it's something that I unfortunately default to a lot simply because it's such an easy way to deal with ganks. But it shouldn't be that way. It's really ruining variety, which is always a good goal.
Weapon skills, particularly the fast spinning slash used by lighter weapons. The second hit of this attack consistently staggers the player, making it challenging to dodge due to its timing relative to the first hit. To resolve this problem, set the second hit of the fast spinning slash to a poise multiplier of 1 exclusively for light weapons, preventing it from frame trapping players. The heavy weapons version does not have this issue, so do not touch those weapons. Additionally, swap the base poise damage values between fast and slow spinning slashes to create a more logical balance. Currently, the base poise damage values for light weapons spinning slash are higher than those of heavier, slower weapons. Go figure. Currently, the combo follow-up hits of weapons deal less poise damage than the initial attacks, which disrupts priority. This is where the player landing a hit loses the ability to continue aggression. Making the combo follow-up hits deal the same poise damage as the initial hit might solve this problem, but it might undermine the reasons why the developers wanted this system, which is to prevent stun-locking problems. Earlier, we assigned the heavy weapons the same poise damage multiplier for the combo chain follow-up attacks as the initial attack, which was 2 1.7. This resolved the issue of heavy weapons clashing with each other, but it also addressed the priority problem that heavy weapons had been struggling with. You see, heavy weapons are significantly slower compared to light weapons. Therefore, they are incapable of
Look at that. What was he supposed to do in that situation?
unlocking opponents. Allowing players to withstand a heavy weapons combo chain attack only hinders the slower weapons, which are already struggling to compete against their lighter, faster counterparts. As such, heavy weapons and colossal weapons will be the only ones adopting the same PvP poise damage multiplier for both initial and combo chain follow-up attacks. On the other hand, light weapons are exceptionally fast and have had a history of being much stronger than slower weapons in PvP due to their ability to stun lock opponents. Disabling their initial attack from staggering opponents is not the best solution to address this issue, as it completely removes fundamental skills such as spacing. Fortunately, From Software recognized this and implemented one of the most significant changes for Elden Ring in patch 1.10, which allowed the initial hits to always stagger opponents. To ensure that light weapons don't have the problem of stun locking, the combo chain follow-up attacks received less poise damage, enabling players to withstand these attacks with enough passive poise. However, this adjustment inadvertently caused players on the offensive to lose priority, while favoring those on the defensive who could easily mash out of stuns. While making the combo chain attack follow-ups have similar poise damage to the initial attack could address this issue, it does run the risk of reintroducing stun locking with fast weapons. A more effective way to maintain priority without the risk of introducing stun locking for light weapons is to reduce the effectiveness of mashing out of stun by slowing down offensive recovery cancels from stagger animations. This includes light attacks, heavy attacks, offhand attacks, weapon skill cancels, and magic cancels, while leaving neutral and defensive cancels unaffected. Implement this change by making all offensive cancels from stagger animations only 1 frame faster than regular movement cancel that we mentioned before was the slowest cancel. These modifications, combined with previous improvements, allowing the cancellation of attack animations into offensive neutral stances like guarding and faster heavy attack cancels, ensures priority retention through a variety of attacks, unlike the previous solution focused solely on second light attacks. Finally, there are inconsistencies with priority, where certain attacks that you are supposed to withstand will shake you to the core regardless. The first issue pertains to power-stanced weapons, such as straight swords, spears, and curved swords that attack simultaneously. This results in their second follow-up combos consistently breaking maximum passive poise, further favoring these weapons on top of their already overpowered.
Yeah, we're back to the dual naginata here again, and I think most of us again we have experienced what it is to be on the side of somebody running at you and just mashing that button like a monkey. It's not fun, man.
Damage. To address this, we should introduce a PvP poise damage multiplier of 1 for both hits of the second power stance neutral combo attack for spears, straight swords, and curved swords. The second priority inconsistency relates to some offhand attacks not being consistent with their priorities. The most glaring example is the thrusting sword, where its offhand can have the same poise damage for its second hit as for the first hit. To resolve this, we simply need to give the thrusting sword's offhand second hit the same multiplier as the third and fourth combo attacks. While many damage-related issues have been addressed, there's still a few rune bears in the room that need to be balanced properly. Rune arcs being used by everybody could be a solution to the damage problem, since we would have the chance to increase max HP. But there's other solutions for it as well. Power-stanced attacks of lighter weapons that strike simultaneously hit like a truck. These attacks tend to hit both hits at the same time while being very fast, resulting in higher damage per second than most other moves. To address this, a 20% PvP damage reduction is proposed for the first, second, and jumping power-stanced attacks of straight swords, the crouching and jumping power-stanced attacks of katanas, the power-stanced great spear crouching rolling attacks, the two-handed heavy attacks of fists that hit simultaneously, for instance star fists, and the two-handed heavy attacks of the raptor claws. Additionally, power-stanced curved swords should receive a 15% damage reduction.
Yeah, I feel like at this point I'm just basically watching the video with you guys. I don't think there's too much for me to add, but we're getting close to the end of the video here. There is about 3 minutes left, and I'll say something else if there's something to be said. Again, this reaction is partly to get my perspective on things, but it's more than that. It's to amplify this video's message. I think this is going to be a longer video than the other one we did, but I think the other one is probably going to have more watch time, simply due to the fact that this one isn't as watchable as the other one. I don't think too many of you guys, if you have made it this far, are familiar with all of these terms and with all of these things that they're talking about. But lucky for us, this isn't a video that is focused on entertainment, even though I want to say that I think Waifu probably has done a great job with the information that he was given. It can't be easy to take this subject and make it all that entertaining. But with that said, this is mainly for FromSoft. This is for them. And I do hope that my video and Waifu's video and everybody else that reacts to this gets a solid amount of views, simply because we want From Software to notice us. Notice us, senpai.
Power stance spear attacks should see a 25% damage reduction as they have thrust damage, resulting in higher damage output than most. Summoning friends using a password who are over-leveled currently upscales them, but the upscaling is barely noticeable. This allows group players to exploit the system for an unfair advantage. The damage of upscaled over-leveled phantoms should be further reduced, and their defense should be significantly decreased to create a fairer experience for lower-leveled invaders or opponents. Crouching is a valuable addition as it grants all weapons access to a fast attack option. However, it stands out from actions like guarding, two-handing, and weapon swapping, which don't consume stamina as they provide the same attacks as neutral positions. Crouching, on the other hand, offers unique attacks similar to other stamina-costing maneuvers like jumping, running, backstepping, and dodge rolling. The problem arises from the fact that crouching enables the quickest attack option, the dodge rolling attack, almost from a neutral stance, and it's free of stamina cost. This has led to a significant imbalance in weapon design, particularly with weapons like the double great spears, which can perform fast, stagger-heavy attacks for free. To fix this, crouching should incur a small stamina cost when entering the crouching position, but should remain stamina-free when exiting it. This change would encourage players to use crouching thoughtfully and prevent combat from becoming overly centered around this.
That's an elegant change, I think. That's a smart change to an issue. Also, while we're on the subject of crouching attacks, the two-handed lance crouching attack is really strong. It comes out fast. Now, I say that, but it's kind of not true. It comes out about as quickly as other attacks, but because of how it looks, you won't really notice that it's coming out until it's a little further into its animation. So this is the one part where From Software probably would have to do something beyond just adjusting values. Maybe they could make the attack more noticeable in the way that it moves.
Single maneuver, aligning it with the rest of the game's mechanics. And thus, we conclude our deep dive into multiplayer balance. Bless you for having the attention span and patience of a saint for pulling through all of this information. If you're as passionate about improving combat as we are, we've provided a link to our mod for you to download and experience these changes firsthand. Simply go to the link in the description, download the mod, and follow the instructions on the site. Although it's as easy as simply clicking the .bat file named playmod. Give it a try and let us know what you think. Feedback is always welcome. I cannot stress this enough. Elden Ring has the potential to surpass any previous Souls game in terms of PvP excellence. That's why we've poured our heart and soul into providing this feedback, hoping that it might find its way into From Software's eyes and the upcoming DLC. For us to see these changes in the DLC, it's crucial that everyone who cares about PvP in Elden Ring sends these suggestions to From Software and Bandai. Together we can make a difference, and with collective effort, we can ensure these changes become a reality in the DLC. So please share this video far and wide. and make sure to send it to From Software and Bandai, link in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, a comment, and most importantly, share it with friends. Consider subscribing to Only Waifu, Gabri, or any of the other wholesome nerds that made these videos possible. Go out to praise the sun in real life for once, my dear boy. And as always, thanks for watching.
Praise the sun? Ronnie, god damn it, you're a moon princess! That being said, yeah, it's a really good video, and I am going to be so excited for the DLC. Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a good one.